Well, it's bike night, and my bike was starting to look kind of neglected, and I wanted to clean it up just a little bit. I just came back from riding out of town about an hour earlier before this, and it had a bunch of bugs on the front, and I kind of wanted to clean this thing up because it was looking pretty gnarly. For a lot of guys, they might consider this already a clean bike, but it was noticeably dirty, at least for my standards. Problem was, I had to be at the Harley dealership because they were doing a kind of like a group ride to this bike night thing. This was at about 5 to 5 p.m. when I started this video, and they were supposed to go kickstands up from the dealership at 6. And the dealer is about a half hour away from me, and I thought, I'm gonna have to hammer down on this and get this cleaned up. So, what we ended up with is what I think I'm gonna call the bike night wash. Now, I want to say right off the bat, this is not a true detail. I think that word gets thrown around way too loosely these days. Detailing something literally means just that, going over every single detail, every nook and cranny, and getting everything clean or polished or whatever it is that needs to be done. We're not doing that here. We're just mowing it down using big brushes, using water, whatever we got to do to just get the crap off of the bike quick and easy so we can go back to riding because as much as I love my bike looking nice, you don't want to go too far to the point where you're just afraid of ever riding it. You never want to get it dirty and it just sits there then. So I think it's important to be able to go out there and enjoy your bike. And if you have a way of cleaning it up really quick and easily afterwards, then maybe you'll be more likely to ride it. But this whole method, this bike night wash thing is mainly just for when you're short on time. Now my bike is already, I've detailed it many times before, and I try to just stay on top of it. So I don't need to do any heavy duty cleaning and degreasing and stuff to it. So if you're gonna do this, you might want to consider doing a really good thorough detail first, and then use this method as a way of just keeping on top of it so it never gets to the point of needing a big detail again, or at least not too often. So on my bike at least, this will be different for like big baggers and sport bikes. I mean, there's so many different types of motorcycles out there that everything's going to be a little bit different. But on this specific type of bike, I split it up into two different sections. I'll use certain products and tools on the engine and wheels, and then I'll use another method for the paint. And on this bike, the chrome that's kind of sitting up top, it doesn't have a whole, aside from the pipes, it doesn't have a whole lot of chrome down near the engine and everything, so I just grouped that part in. I grouped the exhaust in with the rest of the engine stuff. Now, as far as the paint goes on the tins on this bike, I mean, first of all, it's pretty bare bones. I'm just dealing with a gas tank and two fenders. That's pretty much all the painted surface on this. I've already corrected that. I guess it was about 2 years ago. I corrected and coated it. And this is Harley Davidson Vivid Black, so it's fairly soft and easy to scratch. So I want to kind of make sure that I'm taking care when I'm working with that. And it is ceramic coated with G-Technic Crystal Serum Light and EXO. On this bike, it's EXO version 3. So as far as the paint and the upper chrome goes, I'm using Optimum No Rinse on it. First, I'm rinsing off the entire bike from top to bottom, trying to work in the shade here to make my life a little bit easier. But I use Optimum No Rinse on the paint and on the upper chrome because I want to be gentle on the chrome as well. Just because once you scratch the chrome plating up, those scratches aren't coming back out. It's different. Chrome is different than paint. Once you get all the swirl marks and scratches in chrome, they're in there. It's right in the plating, and there's not much you can do. Unlike with paint, where you can polish those marks back out, on chrome you're kind of stuck with them once they're in there. So I want to treat the chrome almost as safely as I do with the paint. Obviously the paint is still my main concern. It's the most delicate surface on the entire bike. And then for the engine and the wheels, I don't overthink it. This bike, it's all satin black stuff for the most part. So I just use my cheap soap that I normally use on wheels of cars, and then I've got my bucket, basically just my wheel bucket with all of my wheel brushes in it. And I just kind of pick and choose whichever brush happens to work for the moment, and kind of scrub away and just get what I can reach easily. I'm not worried about getting, again, I don't care about getting every little bit of dirt out of every nook and cranny. I'm just trying to make this thing look presentable from 5 feet away when people are checking it out at a bike night or something. So I go through and do this dirty stuff first just because I'm using the hose to rinse it off and everything, and it's bound to get the upper surfaces wet once again, so there's no point in getting them clean and dry first. So then I do my final rinse down, get all the remaining soap off. And now it's time to move on to the paint and the upper chrome. I'm just using a single microfiber towel in my O&R solution. I just fold it 4 ways, and again, I don't have a whole lot of painted surface to deal with, so that's more than enough to be able to do both fenders and both sides of the tank. And then as for the chrome stuff, I'll usually either just reuse one of the other sides that have just gotten a little bit of dust from the paint on them, or sometimes I'll flip the towel kind of inside out and use the short nap side, because again, chrome is a whole lot harder to scratch than the paint is. Coming around to the other side of the tank here. Not using any pressure, even though it's coated, and they always say that coatings are scratch resistant, but that also means they're not scratch proof, so just because it's coated doesn't mean that you can just grind away on it as hard as you want. So I'm just kind of working from the top down, getting the bugs off of the mirrors. Mirrors on a motorcycle are one of the main, I guess we'll call them bug collectors, if you will. And then working my way down the rest of the front of the bike. Another big spot that collects bugs is definitely around the headlight. Mine had some big, I don't know if they looked like hornets or something. They were big suckers in there this time. And they kind of get stuck in the crevice all around the actual lens of the light. So you want to try and scrub those out. This is all stuff that if you leave it on there for too long, it's really going to bake on there, and then it's going to be harder for you to get it off. So I'm not saying you have to do this after every single ride. I don't do that, so I wouldn't expect you to, but just something that once the bike starts to get noticeably dirty, it's a good idea to kind of stay on top of this stuff. Okay, our rinseless wash is done, and now it's a matter of just drying off the entire bike. The bike, at this point, the bike is clean. It's just still wet. So I'm using a high quality microfiber towel, of course, for the paint and the chrome to dry that off. And just a quick tip, if you're going to use a microfiber towel to dry something off and you're wondering why it's just not picking up the water properly, you got to get them damp first. So I just kind of hit it with the hose quick and then wring it out, and once it's damp, now it'll really start to pick up the water, and you can just keep wringing it out from that point. So now that the painted surfaces are all dried up, I'm going to go ahead and use the same towel to dry off the chrome at the top of the bike. I'm not going to use this towel on, say, the chrome exhaust or anything, or the wheels, even though it's the same chrome. It gets a lot dirtier down there. You're dealing with brake dust, you're dealing with exhaust soot. So now at this point, I've got the paint and the chrome dried, and now I'm switching to, this is basically just the motorcycle version of a Master Blaster. I could just, a leaf blower will do the job just as well as this will, just because of the kind of tight quarters that I'm working in over here. The leaf blower is kind of cumbersome, but if all you've got is a leaf blower, then don't worry about it. You don't have to go out and spend 120 bucks or whatever these things cost. You don't need one. Leaf blowers work perfectly fine. But I'm not trying to get this perfect when I'm drying it off with this. I'm just trying to blow the majority of the water off of the bike. I'll come back after this and touch all of the surfaces up, even the ones that I just dried off. One thing, I don't know why, a lot of people are afraid to get motorcycles wet. Like, if you can't wash them, you can't put a hose on them. And I just don't see that. These bikes are designed from the manufacturer to be ridden in the rain. I mean, have you ever read an owner's manual of a motorcycle that says you can ride it, but if it starts raining, you have to pull off on the side of the road and wait for it to dry up? No, they're weatherproof. They're watertight. All of the connections for the electrical and everything, it's all waterproof. As far as this, squirting a garden hose on a motorcycle, absolutely 100% safe. And one of the things that will really help you out afterwards is blowing it dry like this to get water out of any areas that it might be hiding. Just because I guess the only one real downside to getting a motorcycle wet is you see a lot of bikes that have gotten this done, whether they're lazy how they wash them or they're ridden in a lot of rainy days. You'll see kind of rust built up in the heads of different bolts on the bike and stuff like that. That's really the only downside that you would get from getting a bike wet. And blowing a bike dry, just like this, as you can see, it took maybe 5 minutes. That blows all the standing water out of all of your bolt heads, all the different little cracks and crevices, and you don't have to worry about it sitting there corroding and causing rust stains or water stains anywhere. The thing is, if you're going to avoid getting your bike wet, if I was going to try and clean this bike using just strictly a rinseless wash for the entire bike, it could be done, but then it's going to require physically touching every little spot of the bike in order to get it clean. Whereas using it this way, hosing it down and using brushes with soap and everything to use the bristles of the brush to reach everything, It's much quicker, much more efficient. And again, as long as you dry it off, blow it dry like this, you won't have any issues. Another thing I would recommend is even if you are going to blow it dry, afterwards it's probably not a bad idea just to fire the bike up and let it warm up. And then that'll guarantee that any remaining water or condensation everywhere is either going to, if it's a Harley, it's going to rattle out, that's for sure. But just the temperature from the engine heating up will evaporate any remaining water anywhere, and you're definitely not going to have any trouble then from that point. I didn't bother starting my bike up after this because I knew I was about to hit the road 5 minutes after I shut the video camera off, so I was going to be firing it up anyways. So now that I've blown all the standing water off of everything, I'm going back with my good towel here and just touching up the paint just because there's some extra water drops just from blowing the water out. Doesn't take a whole lot, just anything you see, you can just kind of give it a quick dab, and then at this point I'll wipe the seat off as well. Now another thing you want to keep in mind if you are going to be taking a hose to your bike is if your seat is worn out, and especially if it has any noticeable cracks or anything in it, you're going to want to either avoid it completely with water or take it off the bike if that's easy enough, because you don't want to get water into the foam of your seat. It'll trash it. So now I'm switching to just a crappy old towel, just touching up any remaining water. So now at this point, the bike is as good as done as far as I'm concerned. It's ready to go. I'm sure if you got up real close and looked at all the tiny little areas, you're still going to find a little bit of dirt and dust. Who knows, but for the most part, you just want to make your bike look clean and shiny again. That's what we're getting for an outcome here. So here's the end result for you. As you can see, the bike is looking clean and shiny again. Not perfect, but pretty darn good, I gotta say. Do a quick time check. It is now 21 minutes after 5. So basically it was about 25 minutes, including setting everything up for filming and everything to make this video. And I'm happy with it. It's good enough for me, so it's more than likely good enough for you too. So if you want to go ahead and steal my process and use it for yourself, by all means, go for it. I find it works really well. So hopefully this gets your bikes looking good and gets you guys back out on the road, because these bikes are no good if they're just sitting still all the time. So get out there, enjoy them, get them dirty, and clean them back up again. That's the name of the game. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.